imagine a world where you would not be excluded for being different and for just being yourself. What would that world be like? Would it be too much to ask for? Too much to dream for? I am Dr. Sue Ann Zachariah, and let's talk misfits. Let me start with a story about a 7-year-old boy who lived with his mother, loved to play with teddy bears and dolls and his mother's makeup. He grew up, but he didn't stop playing with dolls or his mother's makeup. He loved the dresses, the laces, the ribbons, the colors, and he just could not stop. And then the fights began. We will fix you, they said. Be a man, they said. And they said, we'll beat sense into you. And by the time he was 17, he was turned out of his home by his own mom. And she sat in front of me and cried. She looked beautiful in a blue lehenga. All she was saying is, I want my mother. Why doesn't she want me? I did everything she said. I was a good boy or a good girl. I was a good girl. But this one thing I could not do for her because I am a woman. I can't be anything else. This story is something that is being repeated in numerous houses all over the world. When people are excluded from their families just because they're different and because they're trans, they're turned away from their families by their families who are shocked by this change in family dynamic. And when they are turned out of their families, please remember, trans people have nowhere else to go. Nobel Prize winner Rabindranath Tagore wrote, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, into that heaven of freedom, Father, let my country awake. But that should be for everyone. And somehow it seems that when it comes to trans people, this freedom does not exist. They cannot live in fear and they cannot hold their heads high. Unless we change our hearts, they will continue to be marginalized and vulnerable. So what is being trans? Is it a mental illness? Is it that they're sick? Is it that they're homosexual? Maybe if we get them married, it's a phase, and then a couple of kids, and a few years later, you'll be just fine. But that's not the way trans works. A transgender person is somebody whose identity, gender identity, is different from the biological sex they're assigned to at birth. You may think that to be very weird, very impossible, but that is what happens. So a trans woman is a biological male who identifies as a female, and a trans man is a biological woman who identifies as a male. Now, this is not something that they do to themselves. This is not a diagnosis. They have no physical abnormalities. They have no mental illness. They have no hormonal abnormalities as well. This is self-realization and self-proclamation. So then, when we talk about trans, that would mean change, right? When we say transition, transport, we're talking about change. So then what is changing here? Is it that as they grow up, gender identity changes? They can change their gender as a matter of choice? If that is so, we should be able to change them back. But again, it does not work like that. You are born with your gender identity in you. When you talk about cis people are people whose gender identity and biological sex match. When they grow up and become sexually mature, we all become aware of gender as we mature. So when they become older and they become sexually mature, they are not confused because their outsides match their insides. But when a trans person becomes sexually mature, instead of being comfortable, that person becomes more distressed, more uncomfortable, and extremely upset because his outsides are not matching the insides. So when you're talking about trans, we're not talking about changing their insides. We're talking about them changing their outsides to match their insides. And something that we hear very often is, you're making all this up. This is newfangled, modern stuff. We didn't have that in heritage and culture. Whenever there is something we don't like, we like to pin it on heritage and culture. But let's think again. All of us have heard of Shikanti, who was born Amba, and who was instrumental in battle. And she personified transgenders. Ardhanarishwara, half female, half male form, Shiva and Parvati, divine joining of masculinity and femininity. Napunsaga in Vedic literature. We have Vishnu, Lord Vishnu, transformed into Mohini, who joins with Shiva and creates Ayyappa, who is the deity for truthfulness and rightfulness. And Jain literature also talks about transgenders and psychological sex. So this means it's not about culture and it's not about religion and tradition that makes us feel this way. Then what is it that makes us abuse them? What is it that makes it abandon them? And what is it that tells us that we have conditions on how we will love these people? These people who are our children, who are our siblings, our friends and relatives, and sometimes parents. We will love them only if you fit into our description of what is fitting and not misfitting. The moment LGBTQ spectrum comes into play, family, which is supposed to be the safe space, the place where we accept ourselves, the place where we are supposed to belong no matter what happens, changes into something else. Why? Is it that because we lack empathy, or that we will socialize only with people who resemble us? How much of our social circle should look just like us? Dealing with numerous cases, families, interactions, each of them unique and different, it's been devastating for me, emotionally traumatizing. From that 17-year-old boy who sat in front of me and cried for his mother. At that time, my son was 17. And I was thinking, what if that was him? How could a mother kick her son out of his house because he was different? And then the young girl, so brave, so tired, outed by his class teacher, who joined with his friends to discriminate, ostracize, get rid of her in her class. She tried to kill himself twice. And I was incredibly proud of his mother, who sat there with her head held high and had no fear, because she was sure that this is my child and I will not abandon her. Now, why is this relevant to me? You may think we're not killing these people, we're not harming them, we've got nothing to do with them, they're not getting punished for being trans. There is a very infamous section in our penal code called 377. This used to criminalize same-sex relationships. In 2018, the Supreme Court looked at this after a lot of activism from same-sex people, couples, and also trans people. And the Supreme Court said that criminalizing same-sex relationships is not fair because our Constitution guarantees equal rights to all people. But they retained that clause and they incorporated gender-inclusive terminologies into that to protect the cis, the trans, and the same-sex couples from sexual violence. Now, what happened recently is that we have a new law code called the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita. And this summarily got rid of section 377 and said sexual assault is only if a man assaults a woman. So this immediately gets rid of same-sex couples and trans people who are subject to sexual violence. Section 377 was essential for the trans community. It was a legal way for them to get some support if they were sexually assaulted. It was one step towards inclusion, and now that's gone away. We exclude trans people, and this change has made them more vulnerable and more susceptible to sexual assault. Now, please remember, most trans youth who come out are bullied and tormented out of their schools and homes. Verbal assault, sexual violence, physical violence, victimization in their homes, victimization in schools, in healthcare settings, and employment. So, and our culture never, ever acknowledges trans people. They don't acknowledge their feelings, they don't acknowledge their existence, and the anguish and torment that they go through is not considered. They are ignored, viewed with contempt. And whenever they are represented in media, they are often made fun of, ridiculed, they are made out to be comic characters. And that is because they are different from what is considered to be normal. And please remember, this misfit terminology treatment is not just for trans people, it's also for the entire LGBTQI spectrum. Now, one real problem that the trans community faces is instant association with sex work. That is the instant association. When we say trans, people immediately say, okay, sex workers. Now, why does this happen? Why is it that they can't do anything else? Why is it that they always end up like that? Are they criminals? Are they sex-starved, people who are just wandering around doing nothing else but this? Let's put it like this. We all need money. Money is important for food, for shelter, and for clothing. But unfortunately, money does not grow on trees. You have to earn it. And to earn it, we must have education. And for education, we must learn something from a school or a college. And how do you expect people to learn if you won't let them go to school? Without education, you don't have anything. I want to tell you something. You know what victimization and worrying and being excluded feels like? The fear. There is a population of people here who are very, very familiar with that. Just turn to the woman sitting next to you and ask her what it feels like at night if she's walking through a street which is empty, there are no lights, and two guys suddenly appear behind her and start walking behind her. That is pure, unadulterated fear. And trans people live like that all the time. That's a slice of what trans is like all the time. So they hide. They hide, they hide. We say far from sight, far from heart. So if you don't see them, you don't have to bother about them, yes? And sometimes they tell me that sometimes death is better than this. How can we include trans persons in our lives? How can we take away this fear? How can we take away their marginalization? The crucial point for this is visibility. Why is visibility important? Because if we see something, we acknowledge it, and if we acknowledge it, maybe we will try to understand. And a maybe is definitely better than a never. Visibility is not just about being seen. Understand that. It's about being included, it's about being respected, and it's about being recognized. And the transgender community, when we see them being represented in media and workplace, it challenges stereotypes, it breaks barriers, and it's inspiration for future generations. We are humanizing what has been dehumanized before. For vulnerable people like trans communities and women also, let me point that this is Women's Day, for women also, visibility is not just about presence, it's about power and bargaining rights. Rights for equal rights, for opportunities, for policies, and things for future generations. When family and friends come together, trans people can do anything. They're just people like all of us. So they can be movie stars and lawyers and engineers, anything. Take Gauri Sawant. She is a trans woman. In 2001, there was this young girl who was going to be sold off. Mother was a sex worker, and this woman had died, and this child was going to be sold off. She adopted that girl, and this voice of her being a trans mother has reached millions of people. Actually, the whole story was depicted in a Vicks advertisement on national television. Then there is Jyoti Mondal. When her feminine tendencies were discovered, she was beaten relentlessly by her family, even given electric shocks because they wanted to correct her. She left home and she's now a judge, a Lok Adalat judge and an activist. And then there is Trin. On Instagram, she is Trin. Trinetra Haldar Gumral. She's a doctor, a trans doctor. 163 rank in CET. She is the first trans doctor in Karnataka. Now, she appeared in Made in Heaven, a series on Prime. She played a trans wedding planner, the first trans woman to appear on national television. Visibility changes stereotypes. Remember, but the visibility burden should not be just on trans people. It should also be our collective responsibility. See, in 1977, US Vice President Humphrey, he said something. The moral test of government is not how it treats the best of its citizens. It is how it treats the people in the dawn of life, the children, the twilight of life, the elderly, and the shadows of life, the sick, the disabled, and the burdened. And the trans people are people in the shadows of life. And then there's Nelson Mandela.
who very famously said, the test of government is not how it treats the best citizens, but its lowest ones, the ones who are labeled misfits. Now, who decides fit and misfit? We are the ones who are deciding misfits and fits. All this is great, we say. We are not harming them. Then why is it that one of our own turns to be trans, we turn on them with blood-curdling ferocity, kick them out, yell at them, scream at them, say you are damaging our family reputation? When I used to be married, my father-in-law, one of the most gracious, gentle, and spiritual people I've ever known, he would have conversations with me, and at that time I was not involved in trans health, but I was seeing HIV clients. I still do see HIV patients, and I see that stigma being mirrored in trans people right now, the stigma that my HIV clients used to face. He told me something very, very important. He told me there are two words, acceptance and assent. So what he was trying to tell me was that acceptance is a passive agreement to something that we don't necessarily understand or like. But assent, it may sound exactly like acceptance, but it is different. It means that you are thinking about something, you are introspecting, and then you are agreeing to it. And it's very easy for us to accept things when things are very far away. But when things come close to us, we have to actually assent. We have to actively agree. And the problem is, when we have trans people, we have to assent. And then the bugs start crawling out of the woodwork. And these bugs, probably we never knew that we had these bugs in us. Trans implies change. Let us give assent to the transgender people. They have hopes and they have dreams and aspirations. Everybody should have the freedom to truly be themselves. Martin Luther King said, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Let us not be silent. Let us give space for the trans people, advocate for inclusive spaces. Let us see and challenge stereotypes. Remember, dignity is not a privilege. It's a basic human right. And visibility is the path that leads us there. Thank you.